Great. Hello, welcome everyone from everywhere in the world. This is the second week of McMahon 2023. Today we have the pleasure of having two speakers, Dr. Kostas Trakas and Dr. Shirin Enger. I'll just start now while people are trickling in. And I will also disable the waiting room so people can come in. I'll do by usual, sharing my screen, introducing the logistics of this week, and move on from there. So, one second. Great. Awesome. So welcome to week 2 of McMahon 2023. So this week the topic is deep learning fundamentals for image processing. And as I mentioned before, we have the pleasure to have Dr. Kostas Trakas and Dr. Shirin Enger to speak with us today. If you have any more questions, feel free to shoot us an email, medhex2021@gmail.com. And if you're here, you probably are regularly receiving emails from our Eventbrite platform automatically, so that is good. So just a reminder for the logistics of our program again. Last week on Thursday, we had our first tutorial of the week. Every week we'll have different mentors giving tutorials responsible for the topic of that week. Last Thursday we had Hossein Jafarzadeh, and thank you for coming and asking your questions. And just so you know that the tutorials are live, so they're not recorded. So they're designed for you to ask questions. But all of the weekend live sessions are recorded and everything uploaded to the Gumroad platform. We do see your questions on the Discord channel and we'll respond accordingly when we get there. And we'll upload everything on Gumroad, and we also have a Google Drive folder in case you have difficulty navigating the Gumroad platform. So right now we're at week 2 out of the week 8 during the phase 1 of the workshop series. At the deep learning framework in PyTorch. We're tomorrow at the Sunday session with the workshop. We'll have one of our postdocs in our lab at McGill Medical Physics, Dr. Parsa Bargazadeh, to tell us more about model training evaluation, and this will be the first hands-on model training process for a lot of you, so that'll be exciting. Just so you know, if you want to keep track on our website, go under the program and the program 2023 page. We'll have the seminar today and then tomorrow, always at the same time, 10:30 Eastern Daylight Time, to have both the seminar and the workshops. And you have received the Zoom link for the Zoom link for the weekend sessions are the same, but because of the availabilities of the mentors vary every week, we will update you on the time of the tutorials, depending on that week. So this week we have the pleasure to have 2 mentors. And actually, I'm very happy to see them return. They were both participants of McMahon 2021, both in the hackathon, and remember they both won something. So welcome back, Ni and Sammy. Again, Ni is a 3rd-time mentor for us, and so I'll just introduce her again. She is a freelance machine learning engineer and data scientist, passionate about applying machine learning and deep learning in healthcare and social goods. She graduated from McGill with a diverse background in computer science, neurobiology, and mathematics. She's a very good mentor, so thank you, Ni. And Sammy, if you're both here, feel free to open your camera and say hi. So Sammy is a skilled professional in the field of artificial intelligence with a particular focus on the applications in healthcare, with postgraduate training in AI from Mila, Canada, and a background in data science. So in this upcoming week, you'll see both of them giving you tutorials. And Hossein, is there anything you wanted to add with this? No?
No, it's all good. Thank you so much.
Sounds good. And we will communicate a specific time of the tutorial with you when we know their availabilities for this upcoming week. So great. Now we have our first speaker for today. We have we have Dr. We have Dr. Kostas Trakas, and I'll just briefly introduce him as well. If you want to share your screen, Dr. Kostas Trakas joins the Executives Innovation from Novacent, where he was a CEO and co-founder. Novacent is a healthcare company distributing innovative medical technologies in Canada. Kostas was also the principal consultant at Prometheus, apologize if I read that wrongly. So healthcare strategies, and prior to that, he was also a co-founder and new to a digital health company. And we're very happy to hear about your talk today. Talk about you have lots of commercial experience in the pharmaceutical industry as well, and is a global marketing leader for J&J infectious disease and AM vaccines. So thank you so much again for accepting our invitation. So please go ahead.
Great. Let me know if you can hear me okay and see my screen. And thank you as well. Perfect. Thank you for the invitation today. So maybe where I'm going to start today is just what Exactis is, because I think it's really important to understand where we fit in the data space. For us specifically, we fit in the world of oncology, and it's really about, for us, bringing the data to the table that allows people like yourselves to actually make use of it and create tools that I think really end up helping patients. So we were created back in 2014, and at the time, I want to take you back to a time where precision medicine, in other words, having molecular data on tumors, was not the standard of care in Canada. So at the time, it was difficult to enter patients into clinical trials because you just couldn't find them. Pharma wasn't willing to pay to have 100 patients in Canada tested so that they could find 2 patients for their clinical trial. That just didn't work out from a costing standpoint for them. So we came along, got a grant to actually go out and actually test patients and get their molecular profiles. Fast forward to today, for the majority of tumor types, these molecular tests are commonplace today. Are they as broad as we would like them to be? Do they have as many targets as we would like to see? No, probably not. But at least it provides us the base for being able to understand the tumor and how we can actually attack it. So at Exactis, we've had to change a little bit our strategy because we no longer have to go out and profile patients. What we realized over time was that we had a growing data set. Today, we are at 9,000 patients. It's actually an incredibly deep data set. You not only have the background on the patient, how they were treated, and their outcomes, but we have access to things like imaging, to their molecular profiling data, and other pathology data. So it's a wealth of information to be able to utilize. And what do we do with that? We're trying to help drive decisions basically in Canada, not only for patients, but also for decision-making, whether it's for the government or provinces, in terms of how do we adopt technologies and how do we understand whether or not they're appropriate for their intended use. So that's what Exactis is today. If we start to think about, well, what's the value of what we bring to the table? Hang on a second here. What's the value of what we bring to the table? Well, there's, I think, a need to have this sort of pan-Canadian oncology platform. And no doubt there are other smaller data sets out there at particular institutions about one particular tumor type, and they're fine. But when you start to think about what we want to do today with for a lot of these data sets, you can't look at rare tumors as they have become increasingly, because multiple biomarkers lead to smaller and smaller and smaller populations. So if you're working with a small population to begin with, the idea of training an AI model is incredibly challenging unless you have a large data set that is representative, so as much as possible to do away with the bias that you would expect otherwise. Traditional trials, which are the other approach to feeding into making decisions, take a long lead time. And let's be honest, Canada is a small fry in the entire rest of the world for a pharma organization. So answering Canadian specific questions, this comparator is not appropriate for Canada. Therefore, we would like a clinical trial here in Canada with this particular competitor. That doesn't sway a multinational pharmaceutical company, but having real world data allows us to actually answer those particular questions and to make clinical decisions in our Canadian context. So for us, we see the need really for this comprehensive oncology pan-Canadian platform, and that's what we've been trying to build. The problem with the data sets we have today, I mentioned size, that's certainly one of the biggest issues, but a lot of them are really not very well structured, and the quality is challenging at best. They're often based on administrative data sets, which is not meant for research. It's really meant for financial purposes. If you go back and you really think, what is an administrative data set for? It certainly isn't to have the best quality data. And oftentimes it is incomplete and or the interpretation is not appropriate for any other context other than that one. So they're not using common dictionaries for the most part. They're using very specific ones, especially in the academic setting. So it makes it challenging to be able to compare the results out of one data set to any other data set. So there are a multitude of issues with today's data sets. One of the last things I'll talk about maybe is ethics. So the ability to actually conduct your research depends on how many different data sets you need, how many different ethics boards you need to go to, and that also impacts time, right? So if you're trying to do something in a reasonable amount of time and you have to address all the issues at one institution and multiply that potentially by 10 in order to get the appropriate sample size, and you can see an incredible long path to just getting access to data, let alone understanding whether it's the right data, if anything has to be done to clean it and to quality check it and to put it together. So today, there's not really the appropriate data set on the market. So for us, this is sort of the list of what we think is required. And this is the target of what we're trying to create in the Exactis organization: a high quality structured data set, common international dictionaries, sufficient sample size at the end of the day to be able to do the work with rare biomarkers or cancer types, privacy for all the patients, because the one thing I didn't mention is that every one of our patients consents for their data to be utilized in research. And it's part of the reason why the RAB ethics approval for doing research with us is expedited, because we've already asked that question and gotten that consent from patients. So we're ahead of the game in terms of the ethics, but we do have the onus to protect that data and to keep it secure. And so it doesn't leave our premises. We don't share it out. And one of the things you'll see later is we're trying to create a platform that allows others to work with us without actually having to share out data for whatever reason. So if we look today at what the model looks like, we're at 16 sites across Canada, 16 cancer centers across Canada, and we're continuing to grow. This is in 5 provinces. We're adding 3 new provinces by the end of this year. That's the pace we're on. So we will be in most of the Canadian provinces by the end of this year. Patients are screened there. Those that make sense, that align to the criteria for entering into the study, are then consented, and then we do an initial data capture, which takes a look at what's happening at that point, their diagnosis at that point, and then going backwards in time. So we have the historical journey of that patient. And then from then, it becomes a longitudinal data set in that we continue to follow that patient forward. Today, unless we're doing an analysis that requires an update of the data, it's a 1-year annual update of that patient's record. So that's how we're doing it today. And I should mention that we're doing it manually today, which I know many of the people on this call probably are shocked. I was shocked when I first joined about 1.5 years ago to see that we were still doing it manually. But there are things that allowed us to do from a pilot standpoint, if you want to think about it. Can this be done? Can we get into centers? Can we get approval? Can we get REB? Will patients consent to this type of broad research remit. So it allowed us to do all that fairly quickly. And so now the question is, how do we convert into something a little bit more efficient? So with this data set, we can already do a lot. So we can already match patients to clinical trials, which is still one of the goals of the Exactus organization. We do want to give patients who have no other chance or no other opportunity from a treatment perspective here to at least enter a clinical trial. We give the opportunity for all our sites, our network sites, to participate in these international clinical trials. And one of the things that we're doing is actually starting to return back a broader set of the molecular information than what sits in the clinical charts. So this may be hard to believe, but in most of our provinces, there are these panels. And let's say they have 100 biomarkers. Well, if today only 10 of those biomarkers are actionable and the rest are really considered for research use only, the only thing that goes back into the patient's chart are those 10 actionable markers. And while that's fine from a potentially a clinical decision-making scenario today, that doesn't necessarily help 2 years down the line when potentially there's another product out there that could help that patient. And it certainly doesn't help when you're building engines to do research for looking forward into the future. What are new targets? Trying to validate targets that have been identified or even clinically validated. So these are the kinds of things that we're trying to do with the existing model and the existing data set. So as I said, we're just at about 9,000 patients right now since the start. So I mentioned that we have very broad access, and at every site we've had to go through the institution's REB, and we have a global governance framework. But here are sort of the key tenets that patients consent to. First of all, they will share not only their clinical data, their imaging data, their biospecimens, if necessary for research, as well as their molecular information. We follow them through their entire disease trajectory. So that means until death or until they leave that institution, essentially. They consent to be recontacted for potential participation in clinical trials if it's appropriate to them. And they also allow us to access their tumor tissue with the permission of their doctor. So in other words, if we have a validation study that is being brought to us that for a new biomarker that is not existent in Canada yet, we can access their specimens as long as their physician believes that they will not need that specimen in the future. So we're not going to take something from a patient if it's still of value for their treatment pathway. But this is still incredibly broad, and I think the one thing that's not on here is administrative data as well, which we do add to the full picture. Okay, so how do we do it? In terms of the data, we touched on some of the types of data, but there is an actual coordinator at each site. They are the ones that are consenting patients. They're also the ones going into the charts and pulling out the data through an electronic data capture tool that's uploaded to our central PMT registry. So we are not a federated system. We find that to be a bit of a challenge from an implementation standpoint. It's been tried a bunch of times in Canada. It hasn't really succeeded. Our sort of central data set seems to have it's got traction with most centers. There really isn't the kind of resistance that people think there is from a research standpoint once you've passed all the REB hurdles, and it does allow us to maintain our privacy and security requirements. We are based in a head office in Quebec, so that's sort of one of the strictest privacy requirements in Canada, and so we do maintain to that level. You guys can take a look at this at another time, but you can see that the kind of information, if you're thinking of what can I use, how, what are the kind of information that is sort of taken from a chart and then structured so that I can utilize it at a later date for another application, whether it's just conducting a query, conducting an analysis, or feeding it into a model. It's as I said, it's pretty broad. Some of these are incredibly challenging to do from an automated standpoint, because start and stop dates, for example, or diagnostic dates, there are oftentimes multiple dates, and it really does require either a very sophisticated tool that is already trained, or a human to do the interpretation of what that data is. So that's in terms of quality and the ability to structure and trust that data so that you can actually utilize it for follow-on applications. That's actually one of the most challenging things that we do, is actually interpreting what is in the charts. We're not the only game in town. If we look globally, there's a lot of different players all over the world. When we think about it, we often jump to the US first, and we think about the Flatirons and Tempest and Kerases of the world. But if we go even broader than that, there are national data sets in both the Netherlands and the UK. France has also created something. Most of these are either one of two things: administrative based data, so they're not diving into the clinical charts, or they're actually retrospective in nature. So there's for example, there's a very large data set in Alberta that was created a few years ago during the pandemic, but it's not being updated. It's all retrospective. So at some point, its utility sort of starts to wane. You can ask a lot of questions today, but 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the line, the value of that data set is no longer as important as one that continues to follow patients longitudinally. So where are we trying to go? This, I think, is the project that we're working with Dr. Enger and her department on at the Jewish General Hospital in Montreal. It's supported by a MedTech grant, and the idea is to be able to actually extract electronically in an automated fashion out of each of the different parts of the hospital, because that's the other, I think, thing that people don't often realize. They think of hospital data as a monolithic entity, that everything is in one place. And the sad reality is it isn't. The clinical charts sit in one platform, the pathology in another platform, imaging in a completely different platform. And in fact, molecular, which you would think would just sit with pathology, actually has oftentimes its own platform. So you're pulling from 4, 5, sometimes 6 different platforms to be able to actually get a full picture of a patient. So what we're trying to do is, can we organize that and integrate it on the hospital and then be able to push that to the Exactis platform, where if there's additional work that needs to be done, it can be done, but it can reside there with all the other patients' data in a longitudinal fashion. As we said, it gets updated at a reasonable time frame, more often than 1 year, which is what we can manage now with the human, but then also have a sort of an interface so that others, like yourselves, for example, can actually work in a safe space, can train models, can ask questions of the data. Everything, by the way, in here, before it gets to Exactis, is anonymized. So what you have is consented, anonymized patients that are structured data in there to be able to work with. So it's a very unique, I think, thing to accomplish. It also, though, has to be scalable. Hospitals, even though we think, again, all hospitals should be the same, they're not. Even in Ontario, where we have chosen Epic as the platform for all health records, every hospital has implemented a different version. So what you do, where you find things, what format they're going to be in, is all going to be slightly different. So this type of solution that we'd like to implement, that we're trialing out at JGH, it is actually going to be slightly different at every hospital. But slightly different is better than having to have an army of people sit there physically, manually entering data. So it's a challenge, but it's what we need to work to if we want to be able to scale to the level that we need for the kind of research that we're looking to do going forward. So I think we already mentioned, it's just inside a hospital, it's very complex. But that's really what we're trying to build. And the reason we're trying to build this is not for us really to be able to conduct our own research. Exactis really exists as a way to create a platform for others, both academic researchers, government, as well as for-profit, so pharma, diagnostic manufacturer, to be able to actually create the products of the future and to answer their questions, and to do it in a timely format. So rather than having to go through those long processes or conduct prospective clinical trials at a greater cost, the platform should be there for us to be able to answer the questions that we need in a reasonable time frame. So that's Exactus in a nutshell. That's the data platform that we are creating, and I'll throw it back to you, Yunjin, to if there are questions at this time, or if we want to approach it a different way. I'm open for whatever.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Kostas, for your wonderful presentation. I personally work on for my PhD project. I work on my the multimodal modality treatment outcome prediction with my colleague Parsa and everyone else. But I've heard about Exactus for a long time, but this is the first time I hear a very full, comprehensive overview of Exactus. So thank you so much for that presentation. So we can start asking questions if you have some questions going on. Do we have some from the audience? If not, I'll start with one. So how do we, so the idea is that we would collect all sort of data and then provide that on the Exactus platform. So I was wondering how you guys deal with privacy issues. So with the data anonymization and uploading, and I work at the Jewish General Hospital myself, so I understand how difficult these kind of hurdles can be to get approvals from different departments, and every different image modality requires its own its own departments. It's very difficult to talk between departments. You have to chase people down to get one person to get one thing, and then you realize that in another department it's totally different. There's basically not one simplified infrastructure for all the data that are possible, and I guess that's the part of the vision of Exactus. So if you can let us know a little bit more about how we solve the patient data anonymization and privacy issues. I've heard about things like differential privacy and federated learning, especially if you have this many institutions going on. So I wonder what's going on in terms of these areas.
Great question. So I think I'll start with the first one. How do we actually get the sign on or the buy-in to do this? And it really requires going to talk to the different stakeholders. So Exactus is, you've heard probably of a lot of different programs like this. They often start top down, either the province or the federal government. Somebody thinks this is a good idea, and at its base, it's a great idea, right? So then they just say it needs to be done, and then there's always resistance from the grassroots folks who are like, wait, like this is extra work for me. What's the return? How are you protecting my patients? What do we get out of it as an institution? So those questions need to be asked or to be answered. And for us, because we aren't a top-down program, we went out, and it was a grassroots, effort to get people to sign on to work with us and to actually have their patients identified and then entered into the clinical trial. So that's I think the first thing is engage the grassroots folks who are closest to the patients and closest to the need. The second thing is to actually engage the folks in the hospital who are going to be burdened with doing a lot of this work. So, your digital health team or information technology team or innovation team, they come under different parts of the hospital today, but they are often forward thinking. They would like to do more. The challenge is the resources. Do they have enough resources to actually help you in the way that you need it? But between the grassroots and those people in hospital that are really know where the data is and can actually help you, those are the two folks that I think are the primary individuals and stakeholders that you need to discuss, and get on board. So that's the first question. The second question about privacy. So the way that we do it right now is that there's essentially a unique identifier that is created for every single patient. For us, that is all that's ever transmitted to us. At the site, there is the ability to sort of transfer or translate between the ID and the actual patient identifier in the hospital. We never have access to that. And in fact, the coordinators that we have, even though they're paid by Exactis to conduct all this work, they are hospital employees. So that helps to alleviate a lot of the challenges. They already have access to the patient records. The hospital is not granting something unique to our organization. It's just the sort of how they are working and what their work focuses on, which is the Exactis registry. So that's sort of the I think top line how we conduct that. In-house, obviously, we have to ensure that there is digital security. So for us, we're working behind AWS firewall. We have very few people who actually have access to the data set that actually touch even the de-identified data set itself. So I think I can count on one hand the number of people in our company who have direct access to that data. So that's why for us now it's a matter of how do we build a platform or the ability to access the data in a safe way that still keeps it out of the hands of potentially bad actors. So that's a work in progress. We chose not to go to the federated route because of a number of things. So from a technical perspective, I've seen a number of federated, server, proposals, and they are all, I'm sorry to say, super slow. They're great in theory. A lot of them are, especially the healthcare ones, are proposals on paper that are looking for funding. They've never actually been built, which from a conceptual standpoint, sure, it makes sense. But from an actual, product standpoint, if it hasn't been built yet, I don't want to be the one to fund somebody else's company while I take a leap, of faith that this is the right way to go. The other problem that I have with the federated model is the burden it places on hospitals. Nobody ever talks about that, but somebody's got to oversee it. Somebody's got to oversee the authorizations that are required. And if you are working with it, it is no better than the current model of going to REB to REB. It's just, you're just now doing it online through a system, but there is a human that needs to provide authorization. And so it takes time to access the data. It takes time to do the analyses. And the last thing is, it's the reason it exists is not for the privacy of the patient. I'm sorry, it's not that. The reason it exists is for institutions who are a little bit reluctant
absolutely.
to share. And they want to basically be able to turn off the spigot of data whenever they feel like, I'm not getting enough value out of this or whatever. So for us, like I said, it's a coalition of people who see the value and want to actually build something lasting for Canadian research.
Right. Absolutely agree with you, especially for, like you mentioned in the beginning, for rare tumors, if you have, you just don't have enough data from one hospital. So we'll move on. We have a lot more questions coming up. So I'll just immediately first answer a question from Christina. It's more of a housekeeping question. Is that all for today? I have not. So this. The reason why we would have both Saturday and Sunday sessions is that the Saturday sessions where we have invited speakers who talk about their innovative research in the field. It's not necessarily related to what's going on the Sunday, which is the hands-on coding part. So down the road, we'll have a lot when we talk, for example, when we talk about in the second phase of the program, Transformers and Self-Supervision, we will have speakers talking about their more specific research on those topics. But sometimes we also have speakers from, industry, research, all from all these fields. So the purpose of Saturday seminar sessions is to introduce everyone to the state of the art in the field. So second question, Yihan, you asked what type of molecular data will be available at Exactis? Will the genomics, proteomics, and metabolomics data be collected from the cancer patients?
Yeah, so it really depends on what's been done to that patient. So anything that has been done for that patient as part of the diagnostic process will be available. Whole genome, for example, is pretty rare. but we are going to be collecting that. So that's something that we haven't created the repository for yet, but we will be adding that at this point at some point. The intention is to have everything in one place, so that once you identify that this is the patient that I need, or this is the set of patients I need, there is no second or third step that needs to be conducted in order to do the work.
Thank you very much. And we have a next question from Hadi. Great presentation. Thank you very much. So how do you address ethnic diversity in your data?
I think it's a great question, because it is one of the things that in clinical trials you don't really see done very well. So it's one of the issues with generalizability of clinical trials. We in the past have not collected the ethnic status of the patient. We are going back to do that where it's actually available in the record. We're looking to do that. And it's one of the things that comes up as a question over and over and over again, not only from a clinical perspective. So are there different outcomes for different ethnicities, but also from a diversity perspective. So are the outcomes, for example, in underserved populations different? So, is it that they didn't get the diagnostic test early enough, or they got something that was different than what is standard of care? So all these kinds of questions can only be answered if you understand their ethnicity, and that's one of the things we're doing. I should say that the new provinces that we're adding will also provide a more diverse image of Canada as well. So getting more into the prairie provinces, as well as to balance out what we have in central Canada, especially.
Thank you. Sir Ken asked whether there will be another seminar today. Dr. Enger will speak after the question period is finished. So Francisco asked a question. So thanks for the nice presentation regarding the imaging data. Do you connect your software directly to the PACS system? Do you keep the DICOM format along the way or change to another one?
So the intention is no, we're not going to connect direct to the system, but we'll be pulling from it. So at this point, we're going to be pulling whatever format we have access to. In the future, it will likely be the DICOM that we'll be retaining.
Thank you very much. And Marcia asked a question, if you have considered generating synthetic data.
Yeah, so we actually have some partners who are looking at offering synthetic data from their institution to us. But the challenge with that, based on what we're trying to accomplish, is that when you have a lot of data in a large population, you can create models that are actually are quite predictive and quite good. They'll give you pretty much the same statistical outcomes as the original data set. Where things start to get a little bit more problematic is when you have small subgroups. So we're talking about here, very rare biomarkers or rare overlapping biomarkers. So now we're using 2, 3, 4 different biomarkers to start to predict outcomes. That's the point at which synthetic data models start to be, they introduce a lot of error into the process. So for us, it's better to start working with the raw data and to offer the raw data rather than the synthetic data set. But that's part of the conversation right now. What can really be used instead of the original data set.
Right. And I assume at each site of your partners, you have a few people working on the extraction of the data from all of these hospitals. And then, yeah.
Yes, yeah. It depends on how large the hospital is, because we have hospitals of all sizes. They're not all the largest hospitals in Canada. So you have some smaller community centers. So from those, we don't get as many patients. So it's a lot easier to do manually. But yeah, there's some centers where you need 2 full-time employees to actually be able to pull the data and keep it clean and ongoing.
Right, keeping the data clean is it's a very it's a very large
It's the
task.
biggest challenge. It's a big
Yeah.
challenge.
I think I saw another question. Let me see. I don't see where it is, but I think I briefly saw whether this data was open source or something. But I think it disappeared. Or that
Yeah, no. So maybe it's a good question to talk about how to work with the data set. So the way that we've done that we've sort of structured it today is that if you are with one of the hospitals within our network, part of the benefit is that you can conduct research on this this data set that you've helped to build. If you are outside, we can have a discussion of what that might look like, what accessing it might look like. If you are a for-profit industrial group, for example, a pharma, there is a fee to access, and it's part of how do we maintain this and make it actually a long-term sustainable platform, as opposed to hoping that the federal government or the provincial governments continue to fund it. We want to make sure that this has a long legacy behind it.
And then the question, whom should we contact to get access to the data?
You can start with me. I think I had my email there, but happy to send it out, and you guys can just give me a shout if you're interested.
It's very popular. We have 2 more questions, and then after that, I think we'll move on to the next. So Eugene is me, but Eugene has a question. Do you have patients with hematological malignancies like lymphoma and leukemia?
Yeah. So when we started, we started solid tumor only patients. So that was from the 2015 start date to now. We have actually we're actually starting to enter patients in hematologic tumors later this year. So by the end of this calendar year, we will also be entering hematology patients in there.
Great. And Hamid also had a question. Do you think that the data augmentation add-on is less data set may reduce the accuracy of model? I don't.
That I am not able to answer.
Right. I have many people thank you for giving everyone your email address. Can the data be used for research purposes, deep learning and machine learning? Basically, many people are asking whether these data are going to be open source for research purposes. Open.
They will eventually. They will not be fully open source in that anyone can just simply access it. It's going to be through a process. So part of we end up being the custodians of this data. So there will be a process to request access to it, and at that point we'll provide it depending on, again, is this a for-profit venture? Is this an academic venture? So there is going to be a process and way. We're still building the platform for allowing that access, because we will not be just sharing the data out to anyone.
Right, that makes sense. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I just have a last question to round off. I know that you mentioned many times that this is a Canadian initiative, but I'm wondering, that our audience is very diverse from more than 50 countries. So I wonder if Exactis has vision or plans to go beyond Canada.
So that's a great question, because up until, I will say, April, the answer would have been a flat out no. And then a couple of things happened. So we were at an international meeting, and we had a couple people from both Asian countries and Eastern European countries that came to us and said, we really like what you're doing. Could you help us build that in our country? And our initial answer was, well, we're Canadian only. But then we started thinking, we've had a lot of learnings, and as we start to build out the technical side of our platform, there's no reason that can't be shared. If there is sort of the advocate in that country to really take it forward and do the work of engaging at the grassroots level to different hospitals and different and government entities even, then for us, the answer was going to be yes. So I think the answer to that is stay tuned. The markets that we're looking at that would make sense are typically smaller. They are ones that in especially emerging markets, the system tends to leapfrog rather than us here in Canada or in the US having all these legacy systems, and it's a patchwork, right? It's just slowly evolving. And in some cases, it restricts what you can really do. But in some emerging markets, they take a look at the products and they go, well, let's just implement this. And because it just makes sense for us and it will last for the next several decades. And so the ability to access data in a way that makes it much more cost effective is there. So like I said, stay tuned.
Absolutely. I definitely look forward to evolving into that stage, especially when I think it has huge potential in especially low middle income countries. We were having a work initiative with different African countries. Some of the participants are here as well. So me and my colleagues went to different Eastern and Western African countries, and then we went to their radiotherapy centers to visit. And I definitely think there's a lot of potential and benefits for patients from those areas, especially when data infrastructure is not completely built built sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much.
This is the time to think of it when you're building.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your great presentation and your time. And I think it's time for us to move on to our next speaker, Dr. Shirin Enger, which you probably all know, but I will take the time to introduce as well. Dr. Shirin Enger is, I have too many titles on the slide, so I will brief. She's an associate professor at the Gerald Brafman Department of Oncology at McGill University, and also a Canada Research Chair in Medical Physics. She's the research director at Medical Physics and the Medical Physics Unit at the McGill University, and also at Lady Davis Institute for Medical Research and Siegel Cancer Center of the Jewish General Hospital. And she is also our Enger Lab supervisor. So she's our PhD supervisor, basically. So please go ahead. Thank you. Feel free to share your screen.
Thank you very much, Eugene, for the introduction. And Kostas, are you still there? I didn't ask questions on purpose because I don't want to steal time from the participants and the trainees. I think they have such exciting questions. If you're still there, I have a question for you. But if
I am still here.
So
yep.
I have a concern actually from Eugene. She texted me when she was in Kenya, and she was very upset because she was at a public hospital in Kenya where they did not have any access to clouds or any kind of storage space. So the hospital erased data every 3 months or so. Can we help? I think I would like us to be able to help those hospitals, because this is waste of data that we can retrospectively mine, or that researchers from Kenya and other countries can do in Africa. But if this is probably the case for many centers in developing countries where they just erase data because they don't have space. And that is such a pity. And Eugene was very upset, and she emailed me when she was there and told me we have to do something. And I'm intending to do something, Eugene, to help out, but perhaps Kostas and his colleagues have a solution for us as well.
I don't have a solution off the top of my head, but it is certainly, it's a challenge in that type of an environment, but it really shouldn't be, because honestly, data at rest, the storage costs are not that big a deal. I mean, it's once you start working with it that the costs start to get incurred. So, let's have a follow-up conversation. Let's see what we can do, because I think it's worthwhile thinking about not just ourselves, but once we take our learnings here, to make sure that we share them.
Yes, thank you so much. Very nice talk, and I really enjoyed it. And also thank you for your collaboration. I think together we can do good things. So
absolutely.
Share my
thank
slide.
you, Dr. Enger.
Let's see. Or am I, as usual, I have too many. Okay, so I'm going to just give a little follow-up talk about precision medicine or precision oncology. That will be a follow-up on Dr. Kostas Trakas talk. And so I'm going to close my microphone because my internet is not very good. I'm afraid I will be else abrupted by my low bandwidth, but I will come back during the question time with the video. So as you know, in current medicine, although AI has been with us for a while now, we still do the model of one treatment fits all. So we have patients coming in, and then depending on the tumor stage and many other factors, we give them a certain therapy to all the patient, regardless of their genetic profile, the specifics of their disease, and so on. We just have a one size fits all solution right now. And we are working towards future medicine. So we would like to have more of a personalized diagnostics as well as personalized treatment, where we would like to use all the data that we have available. So nowadays we can gather data from wearables. We have some patients' genomic data. We have, for most of our patients, family history, lifestyle we can gather, nutrition, environment, patient preferences. Most of our physicians, they do write personalized medicine reports, and so on. So we have different types of hospitals and health centers that gather information about our patients. So we can use all of this to come with a treatment that is tailored to this specific patient. And here it's written future medicine, but how far is this future? You know, we have all of this data right now. We have the technology right now to be able to do some of this. So why aren't we doing this? And what have been done so far? So as most of you know, pioneering work in computer vision and specifically in diagnostic, in digital pathology has shown the potential of machine learning models for improving diagnostic accuracy using automated methods. So pathology has been one of the fields that actually utilized machine learning and AI in a very early on. We will go through deep learning with you at a later stage in your course. But as you know, deep learning models, for example, they can be used to predict molecular features of tumor samples based on histopathological images. And there are many companies in the AI domain currently working on this to take patients' histopathology, scan histopathology images, and based on that, predict molecular features. And then scaling up and incorporating these approaches in clinical pathways can streamline histological examination and hopefully accelerate clinical diagnosis. Machine learning techniques in diagnostic radiology, for example, they can add in early cancer detection and diagnosis by extracting subtle information that sometimes are not readily perceivable by the human observer. And also in mammography and chest radiographs, for example, machine learning can help to detect lesions or changes that become future malignancies that are currently not observable by humans. So we can detect disease much earlier. And machine learning also can be used to identify prognostic imaging biomarkers associated with long-term patient outcomes. For classical machine learning, which you learned last week, you can use random forest algorithms applied to circulating microRNA that can accurately diagnose glioblastoma preoperatively. This has been done in a couple of studies. So, however, all of these models have been primarily tested in retrospective studies. and their real-world impact on clinical workflows and early cancer detection rates need to be actively achieved prospectively. So we have to be able to use this prospectively to be able to help our patients. So when I say, when we have this future in mind, we need to use, so we have the models, we have the data that we've trained them retrospectively. So I think it's time now to incorporate this in prospective studies. So a while ago, I asked Dr. Bagherzadeh, which is one of the postdoctoral fellows in my group, which will be instructor tomorrow, to look at the PubMed and just search internet to see how many papers are published. So how are we doing in artificial intelligence-based studies in oncology? And as you can see, from 2013 to now, there has been an explosion in number of studies, research studies coming out. We have 13,000 papers if you combine oncology, neoplas, artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, and so on. So as you see, we do a lot of research in this area. But how meaningful is this? And if you look at multimodal, if you look at outcome prediction, for example, then we come up with 391 studies where you do integrate different modalities to predict an outcome for a patient. So you look at different imaging or clinical data, genomic data, and so on. So there are 391 studies. If you want to see multimodal and multi-institutional studies, which are those that we actually can generalize and make use of, they are only 4. So as you can see, of 13,000 studies, only 4 can be generalizable to a big number of patients. So we have still a lot of work to do in this area. So there are many papers coming out now that are pinpointing to this issue. And the summary of all these papers is that AI studies in oncology are often poorly designed. They are poorly conducted. You have a small sample size, poor handling of missing data. The studies are weak or meaningless. They have meaningless validation. They are poorly reporting their outcomes or the results with key details missing. Key details missing to understand why the model was created, how it was developed, evaluated, lack of model availability to allow others to evaluate it. Due to this poor methods reporting, AI studies are often at high risk of bias, which casts serious doubt on their usefulness and potential harm if they are used in a clinical environment. And despite of all these flaws in the methods and reporting and lack of large, diverse data set, most of the authors of AI studies overinterpret their findings. So as you can see, we have a lot to be done yet in this domain. And I'm afraid if we continue this way, this future personalized medicine that I had in the second slide is still far away. So we need to work together to be able to develop models that are robust, interpretable, that can be evaluated by others easily, and that are trained on large and diverse data set to be able to use it in prospective studies on our patients. So as an example, I'll have a head and neck cancer patient and his or her journey, just to show you how this can be done to create such work. So normally a patient comes in, she or he has a suspicious lesion, a biopsy is taken, and despite of all the work that has been done in pathology and histopathology images, most of the diagnostics is still done by a pathologist looking at this biopsy under her or his microscope. So this pathologist will diagnose this lesion being malignant or non-malignant. And if it's malignant, in best of the worlds, it will go to a tumor board. So what is a tumor board? Multidisciplinary tumor boards, which are at most centers in Quebec and Canada, I hope. At least in Quebec, we have multidisciplinary tumor boards for our patients. And they offer the most beneficial strategy at an individual's level to decrease the inequalities in cancer treatment across patients. So in this board and tumor board, we have radiation oncologists, we have medical oncologists, we have surgical oncologists, radiologists, pathologists, other specialties needed for the specific type of tumor. And then we have a lot of data. So we have clinical biological imaging data. So these are humans sitting there with this information, and then they will come to a conclusion how to treat this patient, if this should go through, you can say if it's a cancer patient, if this patient should go through chemotherapy, surgery, radiation therapy, sometimes combination of all. And then the this tumor board communicates with the patient, and in discussion with the patient, treatment is decided upon, and also the side effects are discussed in depth with the patient. So the patient decides then after this if the patient should choose radiotherapy, surgery, and chemotherapy, or a combination. So is this a good approach? Well, both yes and no. So it's still better than not having the tumor board. But we know that this is done by humans, and humans can be biased. So board members, they are susceptible to biases, and this is published work showing that this is unconscious bias, obviously, because all the clinicians, they want the best for their patients. However, it seems that most of the clinicians, they are biased towards their own specialty. And also the tumor board members may hold different perspective on the patient's condition and treatment option. And they might also be suggest treatments that are that they are familiar with, and it's readily available to them, rather than considering innovating or experimental options. We have had a very big challenge during and after COVID due to backlog of tumor boards, and the patient files have been not going through the tumor boards in a timely manner due to this backlog. And as also number of our cancer patients increases due to aging population, the workload of healthcare professionals involved in tumor boards increases, which also leads to a backlog in the scheduling of tumor board meetings. And also we have a shortage of healthcare professionals and support staff that results in a backlog. So all of this unexpected disruption in health also affects these multidisciplinary tumor board decisions. However, the main is here the biases, and also the bias towards a treatment. So most of the times we would like to do something that we are familiar with, rather than going outside of the box and testing something more innovative. So what about using AI in helping our clinicians to make this decision? So AI-powered decision support systems, they are being increasingly developed now. They are being used as well and currently validated. And they could be better at optimizing treatment decision-making for cancer patients. AI models can integrate data, for example, on tumor growth kinetics, molecular profiling, pharmacological properties, and so on, to provide a more accurate recommendation for individual patients. And this recommendation can include, if it's regarding a drug repurposing, identifying synergic drug combination, different type of modalities, say combining different radiotherapy or surgery or chemotherapy, and just optimizing dosing and dose schedules for maximum efficacy. So, but what are the requirements? What is required to be able to do AI powered decision support, to provide the support to our clinicians? One of the main requirements are availability of population scale data sets with well annotated clinical and molecular information. And this is crucial for achieving accurate recommendations. And again, here we are so thankful for Exactis, because Exactis can provide us with this data. What are the challenges? So we know that we have tumor heterogeneity, we have sampling bias, we have tumor evolution dynamics, we have incomplete electronic medical records, and all of this hinder us to use and integrate data to build our models. We need availability to large and relevant curated data sets with low noise that can guarantee reliable inference, and also again, this will be remedied by companies such as Exactis in the future. We also have challenges in determining testable casualties, selecting suitable algorithms and features for specific problems. We have problems with handling high dimensional data sets and accurate estimation and estimating model generalization. And I truly hope that after this course or this 8 weeks of summer workshops, you will have some help and guidance with this, so that when you go out and design your studies, you will be able to design robust studies that can be useful, and not just a publication added to this 13,000 in PubMed. So as an example, I'll give just the challenges that we face when we are trying to design such a study. I'm going to have an example for our multimodal treatment outcome prediction for head and neck cancer patients. So we have one postdoc and 3 PhD students. We're trying to develop deep learning in this specific project. They are working together to develop the deep learning based patient specific treatment prediction models that can accurately predict optimal treatment combinations for patients suffering from gynecological, head and neck, and endorectal cancers. And if we develop models that are based on a diverse population, we will incorporate it hopefully in a software already available to clinicians for decision making, such that this can be used in tumor boards to guide our clinicians to recommend the best treatment for each specific patient. So to our, we would like to have clinical data, radiological data, pathological data, genomic data, and so on. And we use, we have reports, physician reports, nursing reports, and Dr. Bagherzadeh here, he will work with natural language processing, and other students are working on other modalities and integrating all of this and fuse it together to be able to hopefully guide our clinicians in the future for the best treatment for each of the patients. So you'll hopefully go through different fusion techniques later in the course of this 8 weeks. Summer school, so I won't go into different fusion techniques that they will be utilizing to enable this. The challenges are many. So for example, Juan, our newest PhD student, he's working on histopathology images and to segment them. And scanned whole histopathology slide images are very large. And ideally, we would like to apply computer vision methods, but most state-of-art models, such as vision in transformers, have been studied for low resolution images. So we can, most of the time, adapt methods from elsewhere. However, as seen here, we have a large high-resolution images, while the methods that we want to use have been studied for low-resolution images. So we use different techniques. We most of the time use what's already out there, and then we adopt it and modify and change for our own purposes. So Juan, for example, he adopted methods used in the paper Scaling Vision Transformer to Gigapixel Images via hierarchical self-supervised learning. And this model consists of a small transformer and a big transformer. And the small transformer takes an input with a certain size, learns via self-supervision, and generates embeddings. And this model is trained first. And then the first small model is used to generate embeddings from smaller images, which are in turn used to train the big transformer. Larger images to train the big transformer. So I urge you to read this paper if you're interested, and also reach out to Juan if you have the same problem. And with this technique, we can extract fine-grained and coarse-grained information from a whole slide image. And this allows us to obtain relevant information at different levels of focus. And in his current work, Juan is using these embeddings as input to a classifier and uses them for survival prediction. Juan and his colleagues are also working on using heat maps for cancer segmentation by coupling the output with other computer vision techniques. So you don't have to invent the wheel, but sometimes you have to modify it to be able to use it for your own purposes. Parsa uses NLP to extract information from this is from a histopathology report. He extracts biopsy location measurements, neoplastic processes, biomarkers, test results, and so on. So all of this, students work collaboratively on different modalities to be able to extract as much information as possible and then fuse them together for treatment outcome prediction. However, as Dr. Kostas explained earlier, we have data spread at different divisions in the hospital in different silos. So we have our different parts of our multimodal data is located in different servers and different departments in silos. Sometimes the silos communicate with each other, and sometimes they are totally independent. So an enormous amount of work goes into gathering the data to begin with. So we have in our hospitals, we have EndoVault, we have pathology servers, PACS server, radiation oncology servers with ARIA. And these are only data that for the patients since a certain date until now. In the histopathology, for example, in the pathology department, most of the pathology slides are sent to an external storage called Iron Mountain. So we have to retrieve those slides back and to be able to scan it and then put it back again in our Iron Mountain. So it's a lot of logistics and work to create a database to begin with, to be able to do our AI work. And this has been very time consuming and challenging. And again, since we allied with Exactis and we have a meta grant together, and hopefully everything that we create then in the future will be used by our colleagues with less efforts. And this is the beauty of the things, that we can work collaboratively to generate a database that in the future can be worked on by other groups, and they don't have to go through the hassle of going to these different silos, extracting all the data, clean the data, and create this database. So hopefully by end of this MedTech grant, we will have a clean and curatable data to be used by our colleagues from elsewhere. I just wanted to have some other areas as well. It's not just in oncology. We can use AI. Obviously, we can use AI for disease prevention. So we can prevent cancer and other diseases by tracking people's lifestyle and come to with specific personalized recommendations to people. So prevention is also an hot area of research when it comes to AI. As all of you know, deep learning specifically have been used to help COVID-19 detection and development of its vaccines. AI is being used in mental health. Hopefully, we'll have one session on this if we have time. And there are many publications of prediction of treatment response in depression, and so both using AI for again here response of a certain treatment to depression and other psychological malignancies, but also in helping people who are alone by different type of apps, or people who have different type of mental health diseases to be helped by different apps that are currently under development or developed already and in use. Some of you also touched upon this in your questions, limitations and biases. So obviously, when we are creating our databases and training our models, developing and training our models, we need to be mindful of biases and need to have a diverse data set. And this has been one of the limitations for not being able to use readily trained models prospectively, because this models have not been trained on a diverse data set. So diversity is very important. So all in all, I think if we would like to move forward and develop tools that can be used prospectively on our patients and move towards personalized medicine and personalized oncology, we need to develop and adapt relevant international standards. And also we need to make our software open source. So availability of open source software is very important. We need to provide a common language and tools for coordination that will facilitate participation of many independent parties in development of AI applications in medicine. We need accurate and representative AI conclusions that require data sets that are accurate and diverse. And also we need to put safeguards, and safeguards needs to be put in place to promote legal, ethical, private, and secure use of AI and big data in medicine. And this is, again, where Exactis comes in, companies such as Exactis that are non-for-profit and that create big data sets that have already REV approvals and ethical, and can provide us with this data so that we can develop, hopefully, models based on diverse diversity of that represents the diversity of our patients. And with that, I thank you so much for your attention, and let me know if you have any questions.
Thank you very much, Shirin, for the talk. We can start asking questions if we have some questions. Yeah, thank you very much for the wonderful insights. Christina says, thank you for the presentation. Can we have the link to the scaling transformer histopathology paper. It's on the archive. It's a CVPR paper if you know that conference, but I'm gonna add the link here as well. Please explain self-supervised learning as possible. So actually we'll have a dedicated workshop on self-supervised learning for the second phase as well, but just briefly, the beauty of self-supervised learning is that you don't have to train on labeled data. It's unsupervised in a sense. You learn from yourself, and basically you have a pretext task. So for example, you have a bit of take a bit of a patch of your image, and then you rotate your image, and then the model learns that these two patches are the same image from the same were the same patch from the same image. So in the end, it's all falling into the category of representation learning, and then in the end you'll have a representation of your original image, which can be fine-tuned using transfer learning for your downstream task. So that will be further also explained for the second half of the course as well. A bunch of thank yous. We have another question from Saurabh. Thank you for your presentation. I'm curious about weight sharing between different tasks when we have multitask learning, such as personalized medicine in oncology. What do you mean, like weight sharing? What do you mean by weight sharing between different tasks? Are you here? Would you like to, sorry, hello? Are you here? Would you like to open your camera or microphone to further explain your question?
So just I want to pinpoint here that most of the deep learning methodologies will be explained to you later on in the course of this 8-week series workshop series. So you will go through supervised, self-supervised learning, and tomorrow I think is an excellent tomorrow is a very good session for you, because you will go through the basics of how to evaluate a model, and there are all the instructors on Sundays will provide you with good insights on how to build your model, how to evaluate, how to build robust models, and go through all the theories. So all of that will come on Sundays, and then on Saturdays we have just presentations to inspire you, more or less.
Right.
Okay, so let's see.
We have another question from Amit. Great talk, Shirin. What's the place of the patient in the decision making in the AI era? Yes.
Yes. So patient is always very important, and all the decision sharing. So the idea is that the AI supporting tools will help to, based on all the data we gather, come up with a treatment for the patient. And in this decision is both the best treatment, but also all the side effects that this treatment will come with. So it's up to the patient to decide if he or she is willing to go through this treatment or not. But at least we hope that the AI supported models will be less biased than the human ones, that humans that are involved in a tumor board, multidisciplinary tumor board. That's the idea. But the patient has always the last decision on going through a treatment or not. At least in Canada, that's how it goes. The decision is discussed with the patient, and depending on what patient wishes, they go through the treatment or not.
Great, thank you. Question from Kashif. What could be a potential roadmap on how to achieve a personalized treatment? Say, for example, radiation oncology. Ria.
Can you read it again? I'm sorry.
The potential roadmap to achieve personalized treatment.
Okay, so in radiation oncology specifically, roadmap is to have access again to all data that the patient comes with, the disease, stage of disease, all different type of hopefully genomic. In the future, we would like to see the response to radiation. If a patient will respond well or not to a certain type of radiation, because in radiotherapy clinics, we have access to a wide range of energies. So radiation qualities, we have access to a variation of radiation qualities used. A certain radiation quality might be better for a certain patient depending on genetics and the information that they come with. The multimodal, again, this multimodal approach can be used to predict patients' response to a certain quality of radiation, certain dosage, dose scheduling, and so on. And then that can be prescribed to this patient. And then everything else can be automated with segmenting images and treatment plans and so on and so forth. So again, multimodal approach can help radiation oncology patients as well. First, by predicting how this patient will answer to a certain radiation quality and a certain dosage. One size does not fit all. Right now, again, we have we follow protocols. So a certain patient with a certain tumor characteristics goes through the same scheduling as everybody else with the same disease and the same state of the tumor. So it's personalization is possible for each of the domain of oncology, chemotherapy, surgery, radiotherapy, and so on.
Thank you. Oh yeah, Sarab specified his question. He's wondering what different tasks like image feature extraction for radiology, images, pathology slides, which tasks gain more attention and weight? Yeah, that's a great question. It's I mean a part of the whole, when you want to train a personalized model, this is a part of the training process. We can potentially put attention mechanisms that assign more weight that's beneficial for the training of that specific patient. So that this is the beauty of this kind of research. So again, this is not one size fit all. So you can't really decide from the beginning whether the pathology slides or the radiology slides, which one will gain more attention. It's really a case by case that can be learned through the model training process. Yeah. The next question is, to what extent can we depend on AI in clinics for making predictions by filling in missing data?
Well, yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, again, here there are many approaches that you can use, and you have to take this missing data into account. So many studies, unfortunately, they do not have account for missing data. So missing data, you need to have a approach for how to handle missing data, and there are many ways of doing this. And hopefully, Eugene, do we have any workshop related to this type of both multimodal approaches, but have to handle?
Right, we have our last workshop actually. One of our other postdoc, Dr. Lai Refi, will give a workshop on best practices in deep learning and generalizability. So I think she will cover this, the missing modality or missing data problem.
Yes, so there exist many different approaches how to handle this, and ignoring to do so obviously biases your results, and it's important to take everything into consideration and also think about why you are doing a certain study. If it's just to publish, or you would like to contribute with a meaningful study that can actually make an impact. And hopefully, again, after this 8 weeks, we've gone through all of these exercises in our own research and designed this workshop such that includes all parts, so that by end of the workshop series, hopefully you will be provided with tools to design very robust studies, taking everything into account and be familiar with all the concepts, at least even if we don't provide that to you, you can search and know where to go and find it.
Yeah, and Greg asked the question, how do you protect against errors by the AI models that might result in inappropriate treatment?
Well, again, AI models are as good as the human who've designed, developed, and trained. So we have to be aware in all the steps that we are humans, we can make mistakes. We can never safeguard us towards developing models, training models, and that are free of errors. So I think this is, we have to come with guidelines. Right now, there are very little international guidelines. That's why it is very, very important that we all speak a common language. We all have the same requirements on an AI tool. And so not just that the data is diverse, so that it can include all types of tumor heterogeneities and population, ethnicities, and so on. But also when we develop models, we need to make sure that we develop models that are robust and be aware that we can make mistakes. I mean, the AI models are developed by humans, so obviously there will be errors. And that's why it is very, very important that we communicate and develop guidelines on how to develop, have to validate, and have to test. And that's why it is very important that the models developed in one place can be validated and evaluated by colleagues in another institution. Yeah, so you cannot just develop a model, train it on your own data set, and then start treating, depending on what it is, but start using this tool in a patient's treatment journey, regardless in where it is. So your model needs to be validated by another institution on another set of data. And then if it's robust, then it can be used. So multi-institutional evaluation of models on multi-institutional data, I think that's the answer moving forward.
Yeah, thank you. Just by the way, Christina, I've shared the link of the paper that you asked for. Next question is from Sarah. Thank you very much. What is considered now saturated in machine learning? What should we steer away from research-wise?
Oh, I would say saturated is if it's being done, then it means that it is needed. So segmentation has been used during a very long period. And there are companies right now that have segmentation based software that they sell, which are being clinically used. So if you're asking segmentation, does it have publishable, can we publish something? It's already done, widely used, there are commercial products. I would say yes, there is still a value in developing even so saturated. It's different areas have been saturated. Say histopathology, they've been using AI for prediction during a very, very long time, but I wouldn't say that is saturated. I think we develop by doing something in an area that has already been huge number of research articles coming out of. We can still learn a lot and hopefully build on, modify existing models and come up with something new. So I wouldn't say you should shy away from, but try to improve from what's out there and build upon it.
Yes, and I agree with you. And a lot of for example, for outcome prediction models, papers often stop at the stage of reporting their scores. And then it's very, even having multiple like 2 institutions, just having an external validation cohort would be an asset for a lot of the papers. So, and then regularization and approval of implementing these into the clinic. I think if you were if you watched the opening ceremony talk from Dr. Steiner Corman, she made a really good case about the full workflow that they have for AI implementation of segmentations in their networks and so on and so forth. Okay, and
yes,
then we
yes, again, exactly. It's just during this, the importance of, if you want to make an impact, it doesn't matter which area you're working on, you know, even segmentation. If you develop a tool that you validated with different centers and multi-institutional data, it can still be very useful. So anything you do, I think if you share, so if you have an open source code that can be shared by different institutions, they can run and evaluate your models and their data sets, and it still have a very good performance, then you build something robust. So that's the idea, to be multi-institutional, and that the models just not work on your own little data set that you've trained with.
Yes, and thank you, Ni, for answering following up on Sarab's question. I'll just read it out. Based on my experience in training multimodal models, it does depend on the task. However, I normally train it end to end and let a model decide on the weights itself. Yes, I find weighting one task more than other might restrain the generalization of the model. Yeah, that exactly. So, and then other people have followed up on different things. Great. I think that's the end of the questions. And it's 12:07 p.m. in Montreal Eastern Daylight Time now. So if you're elsewhere around the world, it might be late for you. So I think that concludes our seminar today. And I just want to thank Dr. Enger again for the wonderful talk that she just gave. And I thank Kostas as well for his talk. So for tomorrow, we will have the week 2 workshop that's going to be live and at the same time at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, given by Dr. Parsa Bagherzadeh. That'll be the first workshop on implementation of simple neural network in PyTorch.
Yes, and
yeah.
this is very, very important for those of you who are novice into machine learning, and because Parsa will go through deep learning fundamentals, and it is important for you to attend this so that you can follow the rest of the workshops.
Yeah, thank you very much. I was going to say something else. Oh yeah, some of you asked us to upload the online the Google Colabs for the image preprocessing one for that Sebastian and I did last year. So I just finished uploading that. You can find it on Gumroad now. So feel free to ask any questions on Discord continuously. So thank you very much for your attendance today, and we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you, Shirin.
Bye-bye.
Bye.